Grab your dice bags, pull up a seat at the game table, and let's go on another adventure. Today, we're going to talk about the player's motivations, not the characters. See you after the cut. Okay, clearly, the players are there to have fun. But what is fun for that player? Can you figure out what will make the most fun game overall for the whole group? As always, the better you know your players, the easier this all is. Again, I'm not talking about what motivates their characters, but the players. Let's assume you've gotten together for a couple sessions. You did the session 0 like I suggested. You've got the characters rolled up. You've done a little bit of playing, and people are falling into their groove. It's easy to make assumptions about what they want from the game based on the characters they created, but you do need to pay attention. Say your buddy Tosh rolled up a dwarf fighter with a complicated backstory and an unwavering sense of honor, who's always meticulous with his weapons and armor, but he seemingly shrugs off every opportunity you throw at him to roleplay, and he only really comes alive in the fights. Alright, well, what about Will? Will's the first one there, always sticks around late to help clean up, and he pitches in for pizza. But as soon as the DM screen goes up and the dice hit the table, he turns into a psychopath. Here's the most important tool in understanding your player's motivation. And it's the simplest. Ask them. Even if it's brief, my favorite is to have an after-action report, an AAR. Roughly, hear back what they did and didn't like about the session. I also habitually make the players do a recap at the beginning of the next session, see what they remembered as a group, let them feed each other and go, oh right, I forgot about that guy. And what they either ignored or didn't pay attention to. Did they latch on to something you thought was minor, but you can build up on? Or did they pay no attention to or even forget the NPC you thought was going to intrigue or even wow them? These things will help you figure out what keeps the players coming up to the table. Alright, I'm not crazy about labels, but they're shorthand for the brain, and they help us plan. So let's do it. Robin Laws, in his book, Robin Laws of Good Game Mastering, breaks players into 6 categories. The 5th edition rulebook talks about the 3 pillars of combat, exploration, and role-playing. And I've even seen an article floating around where someone's broken each class into their Jungian archetype. Now for me, none of those quite do it for me. So I'm going with the categories that crystallized about 1983 when I was coming up as a gamer. Real men, real role players, loonies, and munchkins. Now there's a hidden 5th category of player. They're actually a 6th category of Robins, but we'll touch on them later. Okay, real men. The tough macho type who walks up to the attacking dragon, orders it to leave before it gets hurt. Real role player. The cunning, intelligent guy who tricks the constable into letting you all out of prison. The loony. The loony is the guy who will do anything for a cheap laugh, including casting a fireball at ground zero. The munchkin. Need we say more? Well, actually, yes. Go check out the original. I don't know how original it is. This seems to be the best version of the list that's been floating around for years. Not right now. Come back. Get back over here. Sit back down. Now, the examples are funny. They're pretty tongue-in-cheek, but I find them useful. If you think of this in terms of a compass square. Let's take a look first, and let's take a look at our hypothetical gamer group. Meet the players. Toshiro, Gina, Feruza, Henry, Will, and Lance. Toshiro and Gina, they're the kind of players that measure success in how high they've stacked those orc skulls. They want action every session. Gina's starting to edge towards more role-playing, but she's still definitely there for the action. Feruza's hard to pin down. Her character's a touch overpowered, You don't think she's intentionally cheating? So maybe she's edging towards Munchkin? Watch out for that. She tends to be impulsive in her playstyle. She has a bad day at work, her Warlock's going to be out for blood. Now Henry's played for a while. He's probably the best player at the table. He is damn good, but now he's on a real RP kick. He's got this tragic backstory that he's in love with, and maybe being a little too in love with, but hey, when the action goes down, he's on board and he's in the thick of it. Will is, I'll be damned, Will is the nicest guy in the group until the dice drop. Then he's the nastiest character in the party. He will screw the party if it's the most interesting option, but at least he's always doing it in character. Lance. Lance knows the rules just fine. In fact, he might even know the rules better than the Dungeon Master. And he uses them, the ones that benefit him. He thinks he's one of the real men, or maybe he thinks he's a good role player, but the rest of the group's on to him, and they're starting to get a little over it. Now, let's look at where our example group is, and we've got some players all over the map. There's a strong tendency towards action. Real men, and as a clarifying point, in case the example didn't make it clear enough, real men aren't just male players. My wife's character, Rashida, she's the most real man in the damn party, and she can kick 10 times her weight in monsters' ass. So, don't get hung up on the titles. Where was I? Yes, real men. Real men are there for the action. Heroic last stands, honorable enemies, and chances for revenge. That'll drag them little by little into more role-playing. Real role-players, they're there for the story. And they're a godsend to GMs who love to do world-building and tell stories. If you have a couple of plot threads going at all times they can tug on, you can lead them around by them. And everybody will be happier. Or at least you and the real role-players. Loonies. Now, loonies don't necessarily want to ruin the game. They're agents of chaos. They're just as unpredictable as the dice themselves. You'll know if you've got one that wants to ruin everyone else's fun pretty quick. You need to show their ass the door ASAP. As for the Munchkins, if you can get them to stop cheating, they can be some of your best players. If not, punish them. Cheat harder. Rust monster in the outhouse. Rot grub in the pillow. Be creative. They'll get the message, they'll either straighten up or find another game. Now, again, clarification. Power gamers are not Munchkins. Min-maxers aren't Munchkins. Munchkins are max-maxers. Any of the above can build optimized characters, but your real role players and your loonies, they're more likely to play to concept than make a hyper-efficient character. So, what do we get out of all of this? Well, if we look at the sample group, we can tell we've got some variety. We can do a pretty varied campaign. We can dabble in some politics. We can get some action going on. We can, have a lot of things going on here. I would definitely have an action focus, but I wouldn't do a pure dungeon crawl. Intrigue will be welcome, but don't turn it into a spy game. And you definitely need to leave room for your characters to run a little wild. This is not a group you try to run on rails. So give them some breathing space, have some variety in your adventures, and I think you can make them happy. Now, before I gloss over it completely, the fifth kind of player, the tag-along. Usually the significant other, the date, the boyfriend, the little brother, some kind of, oh, I'm here because so-and-so's here. Now, they might enjoy the game enough to evolve into one of the other player types, or they'll drop off. They might be a diamond in the rough, so they are definitely worth spending time with, and give them the opportunity. Try to encourage them to play, but don't force them to be in the spotlight if they're not ready for it. That's it. Those are your player types as I define them. You'll hear me referring back to them again and again as we go on, so if I talk about real men and loonies, this will be useful for you. Hopefully it's given you something to think about and the little compass chart. And like I said, I will also include a link in the description to the original, or again, the best version of the table I have found. And as was pointed out to me in the last video, I did not break down the different points. So I'll also be uploading a modified version of this script and last week's script to my blog. You can find those links in the description. And I've got another series that I'm going to be starting on locals. That one's going to be a little more fiery. We'll call it that way. All right. Thanks again. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Get out there. Get some gaming done. Thanks again.
Nobody even wants you here.